When it comes to tags, specifically HTML tags, Canonicals are definitely up there in the top 5 for SEO. It has a bit of an impact if you do it wrong, and it can have a really positive impact when you get it right. So one thing to understand with Canonical tags is they are advisory, which means that Google has every right, as it does with most things on the site, to pick something better if what you're submitting back to them isn't correct, or they believe they're getting signals from elsewhere which kind of conflict with what you're putting forward. So, in a nutshell, canonical tags are tags which sit on specific pages that indicate the best page to find the information it's looking at. So, for example, this particular page, I'd want to canonicalize back to itself because everything that's held on here, I believe, is best served through this URL on my website. If I created, for an example, a subdomain, for example, so seo.shaneparkins.co.uk, and it was maybe designed for affiliates to provide quotes or tracking for quotes, then I'd want to canonicalize seo.shaneparkins.co.uk to shaneparkins.co.uk because that's the best page I want search engines to see this content come from. Also, if you do like spin-off pages, so let's say if you wanted to kind of grab one particular topic on here, and its own kind of FAQ section, and it was just a very small page, or it was for like design or whatever it may be, I may want to canonicalize back to this page as well. So it's good at supporting with duplicate content, so clearly demarcation points around what content to be shown on what URLs. The key things I see which go wrong is the canonical tag is incorrect, so the actual URL put in there is wrong. And the second one is a dynamically generated one. So let's say if this was a canonical tag for this page, and let's say I just wanted to put in test 1, 2, 3. What typically happens on some sites is that would serve the same URL, but then it would change the canonical. So it basically looks at what URL you're on and then does a self-referencing canonical, which in a nutshell basically means if somebody put like a UTM tracker, so UTM equals 1, 2, 3, 4. That was a URL, for example. Then the canonical tag would show that URL /UTL equals 1, 2, 3, 4, which is obviously incorrect. So the first place to diagnose things like that is Search Console, pages, scroll at the bottom, and you're specifically looking for anything with canonical in there. So duplicate, Google chose different canonical than the user, which kind of indicates that on them particular pages, the canonical is ineffective. And you just need to look at it specifically. Because the hard point is, with canonicals, is a typical crawl, such as SEMrush, Ahrefs, even like Screaming Frog, for example, they'll identify incorrect markup. So if you put the no URL in there, it's missing, or it's linking to a page which is no follow, for example, and so on. So it'll look for kind of issues and errors around that kind of grain. But what will happen is if you have a canonical there that's correctly formatted to a follow page, they tend to have a blind spot around that. So Google Search Console is definitely the first port of call that I would use. So obviously looking for the duplicates, but also looking for the alternate page as well, which simply means that what you're submitting is not aligning with what Google's seeing, and it's kind of overriding your canonical tag. So what I typically do with this is look at each URL and just validate them to make sure it's right, but then I'll also try and look at some of the signals that Google's seeing. So, for example, if there was a canonical tag pointing somewhere else, and Google said, actually, I want to point to page B, then what I would do is look for why would it prefer page B? Is it more internal links to page B? Is the content more robust on page B? Am I actually making the right decision by putting page B on there as well? So you kind of have to go down an investigation piece when you see it in Search Console. Whereas when you run, for example, like Sitebulb, Screaming Frog, SEMrush Site Audit, it's very much more prescriptive. It's based around kind of a modular look around whether it's pointing to a follow page, is it self-canonicalizing, is it an orphan page, can it only be found by a canonical page, which obviously orphan, and then also is the markup actually correct? Does it have canonical tag, is it missing, and so on. So yeah, there's two dynamics to this, and what I see quite a lot is people do the SEMrush audit and then presume that canonicals are fixed, and they'll never look at this part here as well. And then the last part as well is I do spot checks. So the spot checks, for example, on e-commerce, I always look at pagination. So page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4, making sure that it's kind of self-canonicalization. It's not going back to like the main page, for example. So yeah, spot checking, always good, even if you just get 10 seconds, just to quickly look at the source code, see what canonical it's using. Things like, are the trail and slash there, is the trail and slash not there? if that's right. Second one is obviously regular crawls. So you're looking at obviously with monthly crawls. And then the final piece is you should kind of live in Search Console around these errors, just for SEO in general, but anything with Canonical in there kind of indicates you're submitting a fundamental tag to Google and it's ignoring it, or it's getting mixed signals, and you just need to put a bit of time in there just to make sure that what you're putting forward is right. It's a tricky tag, proceed with caution. Although Google can override it, it can still cause problems. So if you put a URL in there which is wrong, but Google doesn't see anything else that'll support that it is wrong, then that's when the real problems start, where actually Google hasn't got enough data to say you're wrong. So in the wrong hands, in the wrong type of site, this can be quite detrimental. But underpinning all that, it is an advisory tag. It's not the actual prescription to Google to use this page. They'll override it. It's more just as a mitigation against duplicate content and just to give reaffirming signals on the hierarchy and infrastructure of the website. Do drop me a line if you get stuck with anything around canonical tags. Just send me a message. Social channels are in the links. And obviously the website, if you want to do a quick contact form and things like that as well. So yeah, always good. I'm a big fan of Sitebold. That's probably my go-to, and I use SEMrush as well for the main tools. But yeah, if you want us to run a crawl on your site as well, it takes us 10 minutes, and obviously I won't get charged what I pay for all the software. So if you just want a quick audit, do feel free to drop us a line. It kind of is a reward to make it this far through the video. Thanks.